welcome to Morning Fuel. I am your host, John Bundy, and you are here because you believe in the power of the spoken word and its ability to change lives, and that by sharing our stories, we can help others to overcome challenges that they cannot overcome on their own. Whether it's a victory you need to win in business or in your own personal life, you understand that the answers can be found in listening to others who are willing to share their stories, knowing that their story ultimately doesn't belong to them. All right. Today's guest is a manual therapist that serves Greater Hampton Roads Metropolitan area with an office in Oyster Point, part of Newport News. After more than 2 decades in the field, she has been able to help many people get out of pain and live healthier, happier lives. One of her methods for keeping productive is constantly doing research to find ways to help herself and her clients have better health. Advice she offers to others aspiring to succeed in business and in life is believe in yourself. Surround yourself with positive people, whether friends, family, or other business owners. When asked what are the most influential books she's read, she replied, "The most influential book that she has read, hands down, has to be the Bible. Not only is it a salvation story, history, but it is full of good advice. Please help me in welcoming to the Morning Fuel podcast family, manual therapist at Sanctuary of Hampton Roads, LLC, Jeannie Smith." Jeannie, really great to get to meet you finally.
Yes, it's good. It's great to be here, and I really appreciate you having me on your show today.
Yeah, cool. So you mentioned to me that you had a background in media. So where did that start?
Well, the little tiny radio under my pillow with a 9-volt battery, probably when I was about in 5th or 6th grade. And I thought, well, I'll be like Barbara Walters on the news show in the evening, or maybe like Geraldo Rivera hanging out of a helicopter somewhere in the middle of nowhere, right?
Right.
Or maybe write for Rolling Stone magazine and get to meet all the bands, right? And from there, I just ended up going to college and got a broadcasting degree with theology as a second, my minor, and then public speaking as another minor, and started working in radio. Did some TV, was more behind the camera than in front of it, but for the most part, my broadcasting career consisted of radio broadcasting and the programming side, not the commercial side, in which I was program director for a radio station up in Maine, produced a morning show for a radio station in Omaha, Nebraska, and then most recently I had a short gig here at a local radio station, and decided after the industry had changed so much after 20 plus years that it wasn't really the same industry I started off in.
Sure.
And then I decided to do a career change, and that was in 2002, and that's what I'm doing now is, body work.
Okay, so from radio to body work. So let me ask you one thing. We'll just on the media side real quick. Who is the coolest person that you ever met doing what you're doing, regardless of whether it was behind the scenes or in front of the camera?
Let me think about that for just a second. The coolest person I've met, I would say probably the person I think that inspired me the most in the early stages of my career was a man by the name of Jonathan Tripodi. And the reason that he inspired me is my life is full of serendipity, but I was trying to get a hold of his father, and so I called his dad, and I kept hearing his name. And I called his dad, and I said, "Who's Jonathan, your son?" And he said, "Oh, he does body work, and he deals with people on an emotional level." I said, "Oh, I don't need that." And I ended up calling him and talking to him, and found out about how the mind and the body are connected. And when you have trauma from the past that's still hidden in the fascial system of the body, that it can affect you through all aspects of life. And so I worked with him for quite a while, and I ended up taking a lot of classes that he taught, myofascial release, craniosacral therapy, visceral organ release, and technique called body memory recall. And with that technique, what that does is that integrates several different healing modalities into one, where you're actually dialoguing the person through a traumatic event. And knowing what to say and how to say it at that time led me into studying things like neurolinguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, hypnosis. And so I guess that's a long answer to your short question.
No, it's great. And it's like, it's all going up here with me, but at the same time, some of it resonates with me, and I want to ask you some questions about it too, because I've had my own personal health journey, and like that. But that is so cool. So it's interesting. We love in the Bundy household. We've always loved the superheroes. It really goes back to that hero's journey. It goes back to those Bible stories, David fighting Goliath, and all that kind of stuff. And the moment we really hone in on is the moment where that normal, regular person becomes the superhero, right? The normal, regular person, that normal, regular Peter Parker gets bit by the radioactive spider and then becomes Spider-Man and has all these abilities. So you're explaining to me, kind of that moment, that radioactive spider moment when you met this man and began to discuss that. And at first you were like, that's not what this is all about or what I'm interested in. But then now it's your career,
right?
So talk to us a little bit more about that origin story, like the transition from media to manual therapy. How did that happen? How does something like that happen?
Well, I had been married to a gentleman that was in the military, and so we would move every duty station. I'd start all over again, and I'd have to send out air check tapes and meet with program directors if they'd let me in, and so sometimes I'd get a radio gig, sometimes I wouldn't, and then the last place that I really enjoyed the industry was at a radio station in Portland, Maine. And I remember I'd been working commercial radio up there part-time here and there, and I was program director at WXGL, and then the station actually was sold and became a sports radio station. So there was this 100,000 watt station in Portland, and I thought, well, I could probably fit in there maybe a shift a weekend, because by the time you get a radio job, you end up finding another real job that pays the bills, because radio's fun, right?
Right.
And so I called the program director. His name was Herb Ivey at WBLM in Portland, and I said, Herb, I'm out of station. I'm not happy, and I'm wondering, do you happen to have just a shift a weekend you can throw me my way? And I said, I can send you an air check tape. He said, well, can you start on Friday? I said, well, you don't need an air check tape? He said, I've been listening to you for years. I don't need one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I worked there for a month before I met him personally. So it was such a great, fun place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So when you had, I just want to go back to the phone call with the dad, but you wind up connecting with the son. So what happened, and what made you change your mind? I mean, initially you're saying that's not why, that's not for me, or that's not what I'm calling about. What happened?
Well, his father and I met because he does a lot of coaching. And I said, what do you think about me meeting your son? He said, oh, I think he'd be great. And so I called him and went and visited with him, had a session. And one of the things that really struck me when I met him was he spent about an hour with me just talking about my life. And no one does that. And
he didn't know you at the time.
No, didn't know me at all.
Asking you a lot of really good questions, I guess, right?
Like, are there any stories in your timeline that might be affecting you today? Even though they may be old stuff. And
is this stuff you were resistant to at first when he's asking you questions, or?
No, not so much that, because I knew I was there for healing. And so I started telling my story. I'd been injured on the job, worked out at the gym, made some bad decisions with relationships. And so there was some, not so great consequences from that. And so my physical body had a lot of locked down stuff, right? And so I had a session with him, and I remember he held my leg in the air for like 5 minutes. And I said, what needs to happen so you'll let go of my leg? I got other things to do.
Right.
And he said, all you have to do is just let go of it. And we don't realize it when we hold on to trauma mentally, physically, consciously, unconsciously. When we hold on to that trauma, it affects our quality of life. It's just we've never been taught that. And I had one of the most profound, once I tried to let go, I finally was able to just let go of that mental lockdown in my physical body. And when I could relax into the technique enough to stop this holding pattern that people get into and just liberate myself from it, then I had one of the most profound unwindings I've ever had in my life. And my body was like shaking, and it was just a really somato-emotional release. And I was kind of in shock. And after that happened, I said, I want to learn everything that you know. So I took every class that he taught and, so learned how to do that technique, which is kind of a blend of a lot of different things. But, I made kind of the fascial matrix, or the connective tissue system of the body, kind of my thing I had to learn everything about that there was to learn. And I started to find out things about not only how to heal the physical body, but how to heal the emotional body at the same time. I mean, I've got story after story of clients of mine that have had just horrific accidents or abuse or things like that. And when you can tap into that and build that trust, then they can let go. They can soften and discharge all those things that are kind of holding them down.
Phenomenal. And understanding this too, that, and I'm a big fan of the Bible too. And one verse that resonates with me right now is, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I don't think we can even scratch the surface of that, the design. We were designed to operate and to live a certain way. And when we don't operate and live that way for a very long time, we suffer trauma, because of it, not just, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's all connected, right? So understanding that, there's then one of my favorite shows growing up was G.I. Joe. And at the end of every episode, there would be some sort of problem solution scenario going on there. And then when the kids would realize, the solution to the problem, they would say it, and then G.I. Joe would say, and knowing is half the battle. So a lot of times we just don't know. We don't know or understand, one, how everything's connected, and two, how to operate and how to heal yourself. And so it's great that you dug into that. Oh,
yeah. I've made kind of my life's work. Because how many times did our Savior say, do not be afraid?
Yeah.
There are psychological reasons for that.
Sure.
When we're afraid, when we're fearful, it locks us down. There's only two emotions. There's love and there's fear. And when you can distance yourself from that fear and just surrender into, the love and things that can be more helpful for us, it's a whole new ballgame. And it's a matter of understanding that when you can build trust with a client, going back to my practice, I learned from Jonathan that if I can spend that time to build a rapport, to build trust, that person's going to have such a more profound healing experience on my table than they would if I just said, welcome to my office. What do you want and how long do you want it for? It doesn't work that way because it's an intimate place. You want to create a sacred space for that person so that they can feel comfortable and can let go of all those things that they carry with them all the time.
Right. So how do you start that relationship with someone to begin to gain that trust? I mean, obviously, they've heard of you. They've come to you. They're there in your office. And how much resistance do you get? Is it do folks come ready, or do a lot of them, they're just like it takes a long time for them to get there to that point where they trust?
Well, a lot of people have heard about me already, and I've got a very thorough website that explains everything. But the biggest, besides of all the knowledge, takeaway that I got from working with my mentor was take the time to develop that rapport. I have a very thorough intake. So when a person comes in for their first appointment, I let them know, it may take an hour for us just to talk, in which I explain my work in detail because I'm a fascia therapist. Get your history. Is there anything in your timeline that might be still affecting you? I don't care if it's decades old. If you haven't cleared it, you don't have closure and it's still active. And then we see how they take care of themselves because sometimes we're the problem. If I sit on the phone like this all day at work,
right?
Why does my neck hurt? So we kind of uncover some of that and unravel, well, how did you get this way? And I'll ask people, what do you think's causing the problem? And I have found through my experience that the person knows what they need and how to fix it if you ask the right questions and listen to what they say. So what do you think's causing this shoulder problem? And they might say, well, it could be that I slept wrong, or, it could be that I've been sitting on my laptop watching TV in a really horrible posture, and I do that every day.
Right.
So it's kind of unraveling the Rubik's Cube to see, just exactly how we can resolve and fix this. And if I'm not the panacea for everything, and I also can recognize other things that might be wrong that I maybe am not able to help.
Sure.
But
sure.
another form of healing might be, whether it be allopathic medicine or alternative medicine.
Now, you had mentioned some things that would cause us, things that we would be doing physically that would cause us to be in pain.
Mm-hmm.
But understanding too that there are many times things that are emotional or mental that will manifest themselves in a physical way. That will those things will then begin to cause somebody to experience physical pain. I think about this, and I just use myself as an example. I had a brain tumor removed 11, 12 years ago, and since then, my wife has noticed a difference in my temperament. And I have noticed it since it's been kind of pointed out to me, but I have been noticing that I tend to get angry really quick. And so I'm wondering, are there would there be a path for somebody that went through that type of like surgery, and then they're experiencing emotional issues or whatever? Is that something that can be taken care of or healed in a way? I mean, I believe that God can heal, but I also believe that He's put people in place that aid in healing. So is that something that can be treated?
Well, in answer to your question, I would say yes, and it depends if the person's willing to go there. Not everybody's willing to go there.
Sure.
But
go there as in talking about their anger issues and stuff like that.
Right, finding
okay.
resolution because they don't think it's possible.
Right. Well, with me, I just don't understand why I get angry.
Right.
It's like what is that all about? So.
Well, there might be some underlying issue, and because first of all, here you're going through life, you're fine. All of a sudden, you've got a brain tumor.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to make it? I have a family. We have all these fearful things that,
Sure.
Play in our mind. The monkey mind kind of takes over, and it's like we don't rationally think about, this choice or that choice. And so, because the mind and the body are connected, if we have something going on up here and we don't process the up here part, it can become a physical problem.
Right.
If you have a physical problem, you maybe have chronic pain for days, weeks, months, years. It's going to affect your mental attitude because it goes both ways. And with the work that I do, I'm able to, because I've got not just the body work aspect, but the mind-body aspect, if I'm able to help a person clear some of that traumatic baggage in the physical body, and then also pick up the reins with the things that they have going on mentally, the fear, the anger, the guilt, the, every other aspect that there possibly is, plus everything else going on outside of that, in your life, can have an effect on that. And, so understanding that you have the ability to clear some of that is a first step in being able to do it.
Sure.
So a lot of us don't even know that we have junk to clear.
Right. And then you can have like levels of understanding too. It's like, I understand that there's something that I could do, but I don't know what it is.
Right.
So that's interesting. Wow. Cool. Do you have a, you don't have to mention names, but do you have like a more than spectacular, miraculous success story of somebody who's come in and then been treated and then their life has been changed?
I do have a few people. One that comes to mind is I've got a gal that was hit by a teenage drunk driver when she was young, and she was actually dragged for a block before.
Oh my goodness! And
we're good friends, but the thing that with her, a lot of people think, I don't want a massage. It's only temporary. It doesn't help, and it doesn't last. And sometimes the person just won't shut up,
Okay.
the therapist. And so in and out of the hospital for years and years, mother of two kids. And, her husband had given her a gift certificate to come and see me. And, through years of working with her, we've been able to clear a lot of the trauma from the, 13-year-old aspect, but also clearing other trauma on top of, other things that have come along throughout that person's lifetime. So, it's just, it's such a blessing to be able to watch that paradigm shift from, things that happened to you to things that you can do something about.
Right.
So it takes a person out of victim mode into empowerment mode, and that's what I love about it.
Sure. And then understanding too how not only are we connected in those ways, in ourselves, but we affect other people around us. So when we're not operating at our optimal, best performance or whatever, best selves, we're affecting the lives of many people around us.
Right.
As well. So, so if it were just me living by myself, I probably wouldn't worry so much about my anger issues.
Right.
I mean, I'm not violent or anything like that. It's just I get angry. But I have a wife, I have daughters, I have a mother-in-law,
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, okay, well, great. So that being said, so you've operated in Hampton Roads for the entirety of your practice?
Yes, I've been here since 2000, actually.
Okay.
And they tell me when you're from Virginia for more than 2 years, you're from here now. So I'm
really?
from here now.
Does it only take that long?
2 years,
Because I still don't feel like I'm from here. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I've hid my accent so people don't ask me to say things like hot dog and
Right.
walk the dog and coffee and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm from the Midwest. We don't have an accent there.
Right.
That's why it was a telemarketing capital of the world, right?
Right. That's right. Okay. Well, so where do you go from here? Is it expansion? Are you just is it the practice there? Or are you expanding? Or are you been in the same location too since 2000 or no?
Well, I had an office for 17 years, and then I got a little noisy behind me. So I ended up moving. I'm in the Oyster Point part of Newport News off of Thimble Shoals Boulevard. Okay. Very, very convenient.
Okay.
In answer to the question about where do I go from here, I've just got this voracious, insatiable appetite for learning new things, because my belief is that there's an answer to fix every problem. So we maybe haven't stumbled upon it yet.
Sure. And
so all through these years, I've thought, gosh, there's just one more thing that I need to resolve this for this person. And I started researching sound therapy and frequency and how frequencies heal the body. And there are a lot of tools and techniques out there. There's, some of the 0 point products that are out there. There's, microcurrent devices that are frequency specific. And always have been interested in sound and music and how sound and music affect the body. And
that's an ancient thing too, isn't it? Like gongs and things like that have been used.
Singing bowls, and there's all kinds of instruments for that. And those specific frequencies are very, very beneficial. To give you an example of good sound and bad sound, back before, I would say, the early 1900s, music was tuned to 432 hertz. 432 hertz is a very healing frequency. Well, something happened back in the early part of the 20th century where music was tuned to 440 hertz. And it's a completely different vibration that affects the mind and the brain differently. And I'll leave that up to your listeners to do a little bit of research on that to find out more about that change and how sound does affect the body. And so most recently, where do I go from here? I started working with a lady by the name of Lisa Alexander, and she's created a modality using sound called the Alexander Method of Vibrational Sound and Energy Therapy, and it uses tuning forks. And these tuning forks are very specific. There's a set of solfeggio frequency forks. There are DNA, RNA repair, pineal gland activation and repair, brain tuners, and the effect that you can have on a person doing this modality can affect them not only in a mental and a spiritual way, but it can affect them in a physical way, because we can get blockages in our energy field that you can't see the energy field, but some people can feel it, some people can experience it. But to break it down into simple terms that most people can understand, if I press my key fob on my key ring, it will unlock my car. Right. Now, can I see that happen? No, I can't see that happen, but that is also a frequency, and that frequency matches the frequency of the lock to unlock my car. Well, the body's the same way. There's a frequency for everything. So there's frequency-specific modalities out there that can heal mentally, physically, consciously, unconsciously. It's just knowing about them, for one, and for two, finding somebody that can practice that with you or perform those with you so that you can have more of, I guess, full spectrum healing.
Now, do you find a lot of unbelievers out there when it comes to this kind of healing?
Well, I'm one of those skeptics, because if you don't have science as to why things work, then I'm going to go talk to somebody that does have the science, that understands why things work. And I've always kind of been that way. In fact, my first word was why. And that kind of set the path for me. And so more and more research has been done on things such as vibrational medicine. In fact, there's a company called HeartMath, and HeartMath is one of those companies that is all about heart rate variance. And if your heart brainwave matches with if your heart pattern frequency matches your brain, there's a connection between the heart and the brain. And a lot of people don't know this, but the heart and the brain are connected in such a way that you can think about compassion and caring and gratitude and change the frequency of that communication between your heart and your brain, which will give you brain coherence, which actually will affect beyond just your conscious self. It affects beyond you. It can affect those around you, and even distances.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is interesting, and again, being a superhero fan and all that stuff, I think about, Ant-Man. Do you watch any Marvel, or do you watch?
Some.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, anyways, so they got into recently talking about the quantum realm, so quantum mechanics, quantum physics, mm-hmm. that kind of stuff like that. And then I remember listening to a pastor a while back talking about how can we pray about something here, and then something on the other side of the planet is affected by that prayer. It's connected. There's however that is. So it's just that fascinates me. Well, it's wonderful. I mean, I know that there's so much more. I love this I love talking about stuff like this. I love learning. I understand that I'm on a journey. I've seen where I've been, and now I can say I'm going to be 51 this year. So in my 50s, I feel, I think. I emote better than I did when I was in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. Mm-hmm. And it's just been over the past, couple of years. Strength is increasing, flexibility is increasing, all that stuff. So I really believe that anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Really looking forward to actually coming by and perhaps even having a session or something like that. I know that my wife would very much benefit from that as well. So before I ask my last question, how can folks reach out to you? Where can they come to get in contact with you? Perhaps set up an appointment.
The best way to reach me these days is you can contact me directly by phone, but I've got a website that is very vast. I mean, if you get really bored, you're sitting in an airport for 2 hours, I can fill that space for you. But the website is www.sanctuaryofhr.com. And that's probably the best way to reach me. You can
and
also...
the HR is Hampton Roads.
As in Hampton Roads. Or you can hit me up on email, sanctuaryofhr@protonmail.com.
Proton Mail. Okay, great. We'll add that to the show notes and also in the captions. Fantastic. All right, so last question. And I kind of touched on this earlier, but the thought is, what do you, not only where to from here, but what do you as a business owner, what do you need most right now?
Probably I would like to have more people find out about this type of work, because I think I'm one of a kind, or there's very few of me or people like me. So just finding the possibilities that change is possible, and so I think I would really love for people to have the freedom to discover that and the ability to know what's possible.
Wonderful. Very cool. Jeannie, very nice to meet you, and look forward to hearing more, seeing more, learning more. So I'll go to your website and I'll read a book on your website, right?
Great.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
I love it. Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.